Cold wax painting. What is it? Let's do it. I want to show you. Things you're going to need to get started. One, you need cold wax. You've got two choices in this realm. Gamblin makes a cold wax medium and Jacquard makes a cold wax medium. Both of them are awesome. They both work great. They both have slightly different ingredients. That doesn't mean one is better than the other. It just means they're a little bit different. And for that reason, whatever brand you choose to go with is the one that you should use in completion on the piece that you're working on. Yes, they can be used interchangeably with the same types of things, but you should not use those two cold waxes together on the same piece. And that's because they're going to dry at different rates. And when you have that happen, the result is usually a crack or something peeling off. And if we're making paintings that we don't want to fall apart, we want to avoid that. Things that are awesome for moving cold wax around: a painting knife or a spatula from your kitchen. Now, I just said from your kitchen, but once you take it out of your kitchen, it goes in your studio forever. Art supplies that are used in your art studio should never go back into the kitchen. Catalyst. These tools are friggin' amazing. I use them for all kinds of stuff. These wedges will spread and scrape and pull mediums around. They are a mixed media dream. And if you don't already have some, I highly recommend that you get them. Princeton makes them. You can get silicone ones. These have got the rubber. They're nice and flexible, so they have a little give to them. They're very easy to clean. They also make some small little plastic ones that are like a texture tool. These are super cool too. You can get them in all different shapes and sizes. The tools don't stop there though. With cold wax painting, of course, you can use a brush. But this medium is so out of the box. Most people use out of the box stuff to create textures. This medium lends itself to collage, and I love collage. You may want to have some of your favorite images that you've already cut out, or even decorative papers. You also need something to put your painting on. Not traditional canvas. No, not in this case. Your best option is going to be a hardboard, something that is nice and rigid. You can get raw hardboards and then gesso them and prime them to your preferences. Some people like a smoother surface, some people like a little more texture. If you're somebody that likes to have something ready already, then Ampersand's encaustic board is an absolute dream. The surface on here is just the absolute perfect. Like, it's the sweet spot for cold wax painting. Here's a tip though. If you're going to prime it yourself, you're going to need at least 3 coats of gesso. That's right, 3. Don't skimp out on this. And get good gesso. My favorite is golden. They have a very nice load of marble dust in their gesso, and that means it's going to have the perfect texture for this type of painting. You're going to need something to color your cold wax with, and it could be a bunch of different stuff. What it can't be is water-based. We're working with a medium that has a solvent in it. This is going to be an oil and water situation if you put something that's water-based in it or with it. So you don't want it to bead up. You want to find something that is solvent-based. Oil paints work fantastic to color cold wax. Alcohol inks are super transparent. So to make a very light see-through layer, these are a great way to tint your cold wax. Powdered pigments do a fantastic job. Cold wax can also be compatible with things like oil pastels, charcoals. Oh, the list, it just goes on. Just don't get something that has water in it. And you're golden. Let's start to play with this stuff. I want to take a clean palette knife to pull my fresh cold wax out of the jar. Make sure that you're not contaminating your jar with a painting knife that has paint on it or powder or anything like that. Cold wax painting is interesting in that it's quicker to dry than a really thick application of just oils for oil painters. It's much, much slower to dry than an acrylic would be. It's kind of this in-between magic mixed media medium. If you're an oil painter and want to add a little bit of that to your oil, it'll push it around help it to dry a little faster, and add this nice satin quality to it. I'm going to add just a touch of oil paint to this one. This is Gamblin's 1980. They're student grade colors. They still have a pretty decent pigment load, I find. They're great for this particular application, and you save a little bit. So this is a nice sap green from Grumbacher. This is their pre-test professional oil colors. They have a beautiful line. They're Theo Violet. Woo! You don't want to miss it, I tell you. Paper towels are going to be your friend here, so you can wipe off your tools every time you switch colors. If you have to wipe something on your canvas or something like that, old t-shirt, that type of thing is optimal because it's not going to leave those little fibers in your painting, and a paper towel might. You'll want gloves for sure. When you're mixing color or whatever into your cold wax, you can go up to a 50-50 mixture. That's a 1-to-1. Obviously, what you saw was me putting just a touch in to my cold wax. Let's mix some other stuff in with our cold wax now. Here is Mantilla Black. This is an alcohol ink. Put a few drops in there. You can also put in, this is from Pearlex. It's their silver. They have all sorts of different powdered pigments that you can choose from. So these are shiny. They have a luster to them, but now that I'm putting them in something that is not a high gloss finish, it's going to knock that luster down a little bit. Oh, what a cool metallic finish. And I'm going to come over here with some more alcohol ink, put a little bit of rainforest green into some of this. If you're starting on a gessoed board, everything is white. I recommend putting down a layer of color, just a base layer of color first. If you're going to work with oils in your piece, go ahead and do an oil color and let that dry. Here, I primed my own hardboard with gesso, and the last layer of gesso, I tinted it with just a little bit of a golden high flow or golden fluid color. These are low viscosity acrylic, where I can put just a little bit in and it changes the color of my gesso. This way, I still have a nice tooth and I already have my color down, so it skips a step. Cold wax typically is a medium that is painted alla prima. That means you're going to do wet on wet layers. Everything is kind of painted at once. Now that's not to say that you can't walk away from this and come back to it and add more later. I do that all the time with my work. But its distinct advantage to this is you can kind of work like you would in acrylics and have a finished piece at the end of your session. Whereas if you were painting with like a traditional oil or whatnot, you would definitely wait in between some layers. It'd take a little bit longer. So what I'm doing here with my tool is I'm running it across at, here's a 90 degree, here's a 45 degree, even shallower, as shallow as I can make it. And this is just to spread color. And look at what a great job it's doing. Now, it's okay to have thick layers of cold wax on your piece, but you don't want to start with thick layers. You want to just kind of put a layer of color down just to get this ball rolling. Does it have to all be the same color? No. Once I'm done with my tool, I'm going to use a palette knife to kind of scrape color off, return that back to the palette, so I'm not wasting paint just by putting it straight on my paper towel. Cold wax painting is all about layers. So my next layer is going to be this green. Take my tool, spread this around. Let's take a look at another pull with our tool. Here we're doing like super low pulls. Now I'm going to make this more of a 45. I'm not really putting pressure on these, but look how much medium I just picked up by doing a 45 degree pull. If you find that you're constantly removing all the way to the ground, that means you're using just a little bit too much pressure with your tool. Here, I'm pulling this across, but I am just dragging it. I'm not pushing down in any way. I'm just using different angles to apply different amounts. Don't be afraid to take a t-shirt or something like that and wipe colors. You get a nice blend on the edges this way. You can use brushes to do this too if you want. Cold wax is a great medium for collage. You can put photographs, pulled pieces of decorative paper, which is what this is. It's a nice fibrous decorative paper that has circles in it. So we're thinking of layers here, but don't think too thickly. We're just putting very thin layers down at a time. When you think really thick, chunky layers, then you're thinking years worth of dry time. And I don't think anybody's really looking for that. These do take a while to dry. Oils can take months to years to dry for sure. And these really aren't much different in that. You're definitely looking at months for full cure. They will always have a waxy finish to them. You know how you can always put a nail into wax? It's always gonna feel like wax. You're gonna be able to push on it or scrape it if you really try it, or if you got it hot, it's gonna melt, that kind of deal. That's true of any type of wax painting. And so there is no difference here. It is going to be temperature sensitive, and you do want to make sure that you're not putting it in an environment that gets too hot. I like to start with just a little bit of paint mixed into my palette colors, because then I might want to go and tweak it with another one. And if I've already done a 50-50 mixture, I'm really at capacity as far as mixing another oil paint. Once you put more than 50% oil or anything else into cold wax, you are then creating an oil painting. Your medium is changing. Right now we are working in cold wax, so I want to stay 50-50 or less for this to be a true cold wax painting. If it's your first time working with cold wax, I recommend being forgiving with yourself. Don't come at this with an image in mind, and I actually recommend this in any medium. Don't think, okay, I'm going to paint the Empire State Building and that's what it needs to look like. Here, especially with cold wax, just because it's such a loose medium, it's good to come at this with the opinion of, okay, I'm here to learn about the properties of the medium, get a feel for how it works, and whatever I make as a result is just fine. When adding imagery into your work, photograph or cut pieces of paper, if you want to be able to see it, you can always use a thin layer of just the wax. You can also add stencils for texture. Troweling across the top of a stencil with another color and then removing it will reveal an awesome texture element to your piece. Things like burlap or screen work well too. This one is Rufus's favorite. It leaves a fibrous print that can add interest to any work. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty, especially when you're trying to collage things in. Manipulating the paint with your fingers ensures that you're not going to rip or peel the paper up. Make sure that your pieces are fully embedded and stuck down, not just on top. So add that thin layer of just plain wax on top, or if you want to kind of hide it, go ahead and trowel a little bit of color on top. Another way to manipulate the paint is sgraffito. This is actually carving color away and revealing the colors underneath. Now I'm actually using, this is a spine of a sea urchin, but you can use anything. You can use a nail if you want something that's really pointy and adds a point of interest when you're a little bit closer to the painting. Hope you had a great time learning about cold wax and got inspired to get in your studio and make some art. If you did, boop that like button for me, and I'll see you next time.